I must say to you this morning that it is a bit of a relief to me that the cat is out of the bag. Now, I imagine it's a relief for the cat, too. But for the last number of months, as my family and I have discerned the possibility of leaving the Bay Area, it has been a secret, I suppose, that I have kept. As a minister, like many of my colleagues, I am sure I fall in love with the congregations that I serve. I have fallen in love with you, your energy, your ways, your commitments, your being together to incarnate the values that you have set for each other. It has been a blessing to serve this congregation who a number of years ago made a commitment to a vision. You called it your Vision 2020. A commitment to living your values and to becoming an exuberantly multicultural community. It has been wonderful to be a part of and to witness to your striving to make that happen. In falling in love, it's hard to imagine leaving. I felt a bit like I was cheating when I went off to visit other congregations and spend that time falling in love with them and imagining what our future could be like together. I know that I will bring so many of the gifts that I have experienced and learned here with me on my way as I and the congregation I serve find new loves and new stories that animate our lives. I wanted to start this sermon about love beyond belief with some words that Reverend Peter Morales shared in a sermon some years ago that he titled Beyond Belief. Reverend Morales was at a time the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association. He writes that the first question most people ask about a religion is, what do they believe? So we get questions like, so what do you Unitarian Universalists believe anyway? Is it true you can just believe anything you want? When someone asks us what Unitarian Universalists believe, we tend to give answers that are long, vague, and tedious. Maybe he had heard my answers, I don't know. We aren't comfortable with the question. We squirm, we fidget, we struggle. Typically, we talk about what we don't believe. The trouble is that we treat the question, what do you believe, as an obvious and natural one. After all, religion is about what we believe, isn't it? No, religion is not about what you or I or Baptists or Catholics or Jews or Muslims or Hindus believe. Reverend Morales suggests I would even go a giant step further. Belief is the enemy of religion. Let me repeat that. Belief is the enemy of religion. We are so immersed in a culture that views religion as a matter of what people believe, what we think the way it has always been. It isn't. As religious scholar Karen Armstrong has made clear in her writings, all of this emphasis on what someone believes is actually very modern and very Western. Peter Morales is convinced that religion without belief is true religion. Religion that is focused on belief is a dangerous corruption of true religion. True religion is about what we love, not about what we think. True religion is about what you and I hold sacred. The practice of true religion is faithfulness to what we love. The key religious questions you and I must answer are these. Why do we love so much that we are moved to tears? What gives us unspeakable joy? What brings us peace beyond understanding? What do we love so much that it calls us to action? What do we care about so deeply that we willingly, joyfully devote our lives to it? When we focus on what we truly love, we ask life's essential questions. We ask questions like, how shall I live? When we ask the question together in community, it becomes, how shall we live together? What shall we do together? When we focus on what we truly love, we discover something wonderful. We discover that we love the same things. We realize that we need one another. We want to be compassionate and gentle with one another. We want to raise children who are kind, joyful, and responsible. We aspire to create religious community where we can come to know one another more deeply. We want to create a place where we can cry together, laugh together, sing together, learn together, and act together. Reverend Morales concludes, we want a place where we can come together to remind ourselves of what is truly worthwhile. In this morning's invocation, we sang the words of 19th century Unitarian minister Reverend Theodore Parker, who wrote, "Be ours a religion which like sunshine goes everywhere, its temple all space, its shrine the good heart, its creed all truth, its rituals works of love." Reverend Morales echoes that in the 21st century, encapsulating this, be ours a religion that is beyond belief. Unitarian Universalist theologian Thandeka recently articulated this idea of the core of our religious tradition as love beyond belief. I love that play on words, when I think of beyond, I think of, oh my goodness, that was wonderful, beyond belief. It was so amazing. So love can be like that, beyond belief, but it is also beyond belief in the sense of what we think. The experience of love beyond belief, Thandeka explains, is the actual experience of feeling connected to all of life at once, feeling awe, wonder, and love of life itself. The access point to this state of consciousness isn't our thinking, it's our feeling. In this interior domain of human experience, one feels enlivening compassion, care, love, and a resonance with all life. Thandeka argues that our theology, our religious tradition, is founded and grounded in love, and more specifically, Unitarian Universalism is grounded in the experiences of connectedness that each one of us has to the all. When we experience this connectedness between ourselves, the all, and the all, we are having a basic religious experience. Our liberal religion begins not with rational arguments or rational beliefs or even rational thoughts, but it begins with the feeling of being an integral part of something that is greater than ourselves. Thandeka cautions us all to observe that this feeling of connectedness transcends any clear, precise religious labels. For example, for Christians, it's God. For Buddhists, Sunyata. For pagans, Gaia. For humanists, the infinite, uncreated universe. So regardless of how we might describe this connectedness to all, this being part of something greater than ourselves, I imagine we all experience it. Therefore, it is not love that is grounded in some kind of belief that we might have about love, but a love that is beyond what we think and rests in our actual experiences of awe, wonder, joy, connectedness, and love of life itself. I, as a minister, find myself focused not upon what one may describe as their beliefs, but how one is to let their life speak. I want to know how each of us on our own and collectively bring our values, that which we love, to life, how they are incarnated in the world. For I cannot see what you believe, but I can see what you do. I'm wondering if any of you have rituals that you perform on a daily basis. I was a little discombobulated this morning coming to worship. You see, I have this coffee maker that is on the fritz. The light blinks to tell me that it's ready to brew my delicious elixir of life. But when that said button is pushed, it does nothing. Nothing at all. I was left bereft of my coffee this morning, which left me bereft of the ritual that I perform. I descend the stairs each morning to brew exactly 2 pods of coffee, both compostable, into a mug that has been preheated with hot water so that it will extend the warm delights of the coffee longer into my day. Now, this might be beyond belief to you, but I take that warm coffee, I dump it in a blender, and I add butter and coconut oil. See, I knew it was going to be beyond belief for you. But that is what I do. It's part of the ritual to hear the whir of the blender, to have that frothy bit on the top pour gently into my cup. And then the ritual is completed with a moment to sip that said coffee with some contemplation and solitude before transporting myself into the rest of the day. I suppose, you could think that this coffee making has become a habit for me. You see, I think about this because I was introduced to a book by a Canadian Christian theologian who lives in Michigan. I'm not sure why it is that Canadians are living in Michigan these days, but that's an aside. This fella, Dr. James Smith, has recently published a book which is titled, "You Are What You Love." I love that title, "You Are What You Love, the Spiritual Power of Habit." In his book, he suggests that rather than examining our thoughts, he invites people to examine their habits as a way to deepen our understanding of how our values get incarnated in the world. He suggests that much of contemporary Christianity is rooted in the Enlightenment and gives human cognition undue centrality in its understanding of personhood. This view of our human identity sees human emotions and behaviors merely as the result of our thought, our human thought, as in, I think, therefore I behave. I'd suggest, I think, that in many corners of Unitarian Universalism, the idea of I think, therefore I behave, and our sometimes oversubscription to intellectualism is, in certain corners, being displaced with the idea that I love, therefore I behave. I love, therefore I behave. And therefore we find ourselves more often asking the questions, what do we love so much that we are moved to tears? What gives us unspeakable joy? What brings us peace beyond understanding? What do we love so much that it calls us to action? What do we care about so deeply that we willingly, joyfully devote our lives to it? Smith's writing suggests that this understanding that places human cognition at the center of our personhood does not take into account the impact of our human practices, rituals, and what he calls secular liturgies, kind of like my making of coffee, that over periods of time have a deep influence on how we let our life speak. It's our habits, what we do, that have this deep influence, not so much our beliefs. We're living our lives. The title of the book, What You Are, What You Love, is a beautiful encapsulation of this idea that we are more fundamentally lovers than we are thinkers. We love in order to know, not know in order to love. These desires, these loves are manifested in the daily life and habits that we have. The way to train our desires is through ritual, through habit. So how do we examine those habits? He writes, your deepest desire is the one manifested by your daily life and habits. This is because our action, our doing, bubbles up from our loves, which are habits we've acquired through the practices that we're immersed in. That means the formation of my loves and desires can be happening under the hood of consciousness. I might be learning to love something that I'm not even aware of, and that nonetheless governs my life in unconscious ways. An example that I thought of when I think of these unconscious ways was the value that I witnessed in my parents' commitment to their religious community, my religious community of my childhood. It was seen in the habit of going every Sunday morning to worship together. And it was seen in every Sunday morning making a financial contribution to the life of that religious community. Oh, I understand you still have an opportunity to do that here, to make a financial commitment. If you haven't already. So, Smith continues, your love or desire aimed at a vision of the good life that shapes how you see the world while also moving and motivating you is operative on a largely non-conscious level. Your love is kind of automaticity. That's why we need to be aware of how it is acquired. So if it's the daily rituals and habits that we perform each day, often non-consciously, that shape what we love, and which in turn can govern our lives, how is it then that we can enumerate these habits, gain awareness of how they may have been acquired, and then subsequently, if necessary, supplant them at first consciously, so that the way we live our lives is compatible with those values, those commitments, those answers to the questions posed earlier. How shall I live? How shall we live together? What shall we do together? We learn to love then not primarily by acquiring information about what we should love, but rather through practices that form the habits of how we love. Smith writes, it's like we have moral muscles that are trained in the same way our biological muscles are trained when we practice a golf swing, or like some days when I'm in the sanctuary listening to Brett, the way he practices arpeggios and scales over and over and over again on the piano to build that muscle memory. So welcome to our Moral Fitness Club. Memberships are still available. 1 o'clock today. It is here that we get a chance to work out those moral muscles, form habits that are compatible with the values that we wish to incarnate in the world. We gather in religious community here in so many ways. We gather in small groups like Community Circle. We gather for classes. We gather for Vespers, community dinners, choir rehearsal, religious education, and the like. And in each Sunday, we come together for this time, our worship. So may I suggest that our worship together should really not be teaching us how to think. It should be teaching us how to love. Unitarian Universalist religious community teaches how to love by inviting us into the stories of how that love is manifested in the world, and implanting those ways of love not in our minds, but in our bones. May we love beyond belief. Amen. Yeah. Amen.